Okay, let's go for it. So we've got 45 minutes over a bit of lunch, I hope, and having had a swim in your case, Dave, so that's brilliant. You must be feeling pretty good with yourself, good about yourself. That's great. Tackling portfolio prioritization once and for all. That is the topic we've got today. We'll do a brief introduction in a moment. Very, very purposefully, I've picked that topic because it's a challenge that nearly all of our customers confront, and we'll come back to that in a moment. By way of introduction, my name is Rupert Taylor. I'm the Chief Executive of Kivue Limited. Kivue is a company that specialises in outcome-focused and value-based PMO solutions and portfolio solutions. We do have a bit of software, which is a portfolio management and reporting platform. It's not a traditional PPM platform, it's slightly different. And so you'll probably see little tiny bits of that during this session. Not so much to promote it as to say this is how we perform around prioritization. But that's not to say that you can't use other products and Excel spreadsheets or whatever you use. It's more to validate and verify the point that we're making. So that's me in a nutshell. My background is 30 years of delivering transformation, being involved in portfolio management, etc. So we've got quite a depth of experience of having been through these sorts of challenges, and we go through them day to day with lots of different companies because we deal with our clients, and lots of our clients, some of whom are on here today, confront this particular challenge around tackling portfolio prioritization. That's me. AP, do you want to quickly do a bit of an intro?
Thank you, Rupert. Hi, I'm Andy Parsons. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Kivue and also the Principal Consultant. And I guess it's that bit of my role that is particularly relevant here in terms of my background, which is change delivery for my entire career, from junior project manager through project manager, program manager, portfolio manager, and work with a whole range of our clients to support them get the most out of delivering their portfolio and help and guide and support wherever I can. Prioritization is a particular interest for me, and have sort of done it in my previous jobs, but also seen it across many different organizations and seeing what works well and what doesn't work so well, and how different companies and organizations can go about managing their new pipeline of work. So hopefully, got some good stuff to chip in.
I think we talk about prioritization probably about 5 times a week. I mean, it is literally, it's one of those items on the agenda that's on the agenda all the time with nearly everybody. So there's 3 or 4 items that are nearly always there. There's prioritization, there's resource management and capacity planning and how you really do it with credibility. There's benefits realization and tracking and how you do it with credibility. And
dependencies.
Oh yeah, portfolio level dependency, tracking, management, etc. They always come up everywhere. And the reason they do is unquestionably because we all find them a challenge. And in fact, the thing that really made me sort of identify this topic was because, and I'm just going to share screens a second, see if I can get this working. There we go. Will this go onto the screen here? I think it will.
Should, just you can share it for me. Yeah.
Okay, I want to share this. Hang on, 2 secs.
No, you're going to have to come out of there. Sorry, technical problems. So unshare at the bottom.
Stop sharing.
There we go, and try again.
Share screens.
Yeah, go to window.
Yeah. Aha, fantastic. Okay, so I'm sharing a screen here, which is, these are, we do PMO assessments. So we assess our clients' PMOs versus what we call next generation PMOs. And next generation PMOs essentially are more to do with our value-based and outcome-based PMOs. And you'll see here that the first thing that we assess is various different elements: building the portfolio, reporting and insights, controls and governance, blah, blah, blah. But the first thing we assess in building the portfolio is project and portfolio prioritization. and we essentially assess with a level of maturity, etc. And we do these PMO assessments pretty regularly with different objectives for different companies. Let me just get out of there. Where's the stop?
Down at the bottom. Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Okay, let me get out of there. There we are.
I think one of the key things here is just to be clear on what we're talking about in terms of prioritisation. So that is looking at new projects to start and deciding which ones are the right projects at the right time. That's the fundamentals of it. I think everyone else will be on that page, and whether that's hopefully correct. And I see that as breaking into two parts. So I think first of all there is the capturing of the new idea, the thing that you want to do, and the second part is then the assessment of it. So, and that includes kind of deciding on its prioritization and whatever else.
Yeah.
I think the thing for us is always that you've got to really try and keep it as super simple as possible. So the scenarios that I've seen that have worked well are keep it very, very basic kind of in terms of templates, in terms of process, in terms of the way it works. So then the whole organization can understand it, and they know what's happening, and they know how governance for prioritization works. They know what they've got to do when, and it's a regular process. So people can kind of repeatedly, once a month or once a quarter or whatever you choose is right, look at what the new things coming down the line are, have those discussions and make the right decisions.
So what are the deal breakers then? What is it that stops? So you and I know when we talk to our clients every week, they all say, well, the majority say the similar sorts of things, which are, number one, we continue to get pet projects.
Yep.
Pet projects that the chief executive or whoever it is decides they want to do. Number two, the person that shouts loudest gets their projects on the roadmap.
Yep.
So, you know, what are the barriers? What are the things that we have to have in place in order to, because part of it's cultural.
Yeah.
Part of it's to do with leadership. And that's the third thing that comes up time and time again, is that no matter how hard we try, everything gets through.
Yeah.
There is no such thing as a rejection. Yeah. If they want it, it gets through. So consequently, we end up with an incredibly congested portfolio. So let's look at the barriers. What is it?
So let me talk the sort of the process and the way of working for a minute, and then we'll come back to you and you can talk about leadership. And because you're exactly right, it's essential that you have the right level of leadership in the organisation who will champion this process and who will support it and who will be there who says no occasionally. Yeah. And that needs to happen, and that's absolutely essential, and that helps drive the right culture. So in my logical mind, I'm going to start at the very start. So the first thing that we see is not very successful is that capturing of what the ideas are. So I don't know whether you want to try and share screens again and see if we can get to the PowerPoint slide that we just got as a kind of a reference. So capturing the, sorry, Rupert, go to window. No, not that one. Sorry, mate. Go to share again.
Not that one?
Not that one. Bear with us, technical problems.
Stop sharing.
Yeah, that's cool, yeah. And go to share again, and yeah. I think next time, Rupert, I'll drive the screen and you can do the talking. Yeah, share screen.
That is what happens when you get hair that's this grey.
Yeah.
Share screen.
And then window. Yeah. And then have you got
what do you want? Perform?
PowerPoint. The PowerPoint one.
Yep.
That one. There you go. Okay,
voila.
So this is an example of a very simple capture of a new request. So you've got to get this right to start off with. And what this is not capturing the solution or the process change or the answer to the question. This is capturing what the question is. So if we look at the request form, it's just very, very simple detail. You can steal this, you can use it for your own organization, whatever else, but it just simply get people to fill in, whoever wants a project, get them to fill in what is the problem, what are they trying to solve. Don't tell you the solution, but get them to put in what they're trying to solve. So that's the first thing that quite often goes wrong. Sometimes it's overcomplicated, sometimes it doesn't exist at all, sometimes the request is actually the solution. We want one of these. Well, actually, there might be something else that does the job just as well that hasn't necessarily been thought through. So capture what the problem is trying to solve. So then the second part of the process, we can go on to the second slide here, is actually the assessment and that response. So this is even before we get to prioritization. So you need to have a think about, right, so we know what the problem is, how are we going to solve it? Is it a new process? Is it a business change? Is it a reorganization? Is it buying a new solution? Is it developing something? Is it, I don't know, moving somewhere? Anything, whatever that solution is. And what do you need to actually implement that? Now, this is super high level at this stage. That's all you need to do to make your priority decision. You don't need to know all of the infinite details of exact costs and details of requirements and whatever else. It's just capturing the key information.
And this therefore assumes that your gate zero, as an example, is based on a very high level feasibility of an idea or a concept.
Exactly right.
And is not at the stage of a detailed business case or anything like that, which is just a complete waste of effort if it leads nowhere.
Exactly right. And so it is that high level information that can drive that priority decision. And once you're set up, you're then you're then able to drive those right discussions, and we'll come on to governance and leadership in a minute. The example that I quite often use, and forgive me, hopefully it's relevant to actually buying a car. So if your problem is we need to travel around, your solution might be you need to buy a car, and this response would say, well, it's going to be a 4-door family car, it's going to be economic, and it's going to cost between 25 and 30 grand. That's the level of detail.
Feasibility.
You don't know what type it is, you don't know what the spec is, you don't know the colour, you don't know exactly where you're getting it from, but you know you're not getting a Bentley. You equally know you're not getting an old banger. So you've got enough just to give you the right idea, and then you can work out how important that is and whatever else. And then once you start the project, you go past your gate zero, you can start to get into those details, but let's get enough of an idea to be able to make the right decision and say, actually, yeah, this is what we're going to do. So I've just seen, Hannah, you got a question come in here. So it really depends on the type of project that it is.
So the question is, what levels of analysis, from Hannah, what levels of analysis would you have at the early stage as a stroke response?
So I would have some very high level analysis from people that have some experience of delivering change in your organization. Now that might be business analysts, it might be solution architects, it might be project manager types, it might be subject matter experts, but it's initial kind of quick glance. If you as an organization don't have that experience, you've never done one of these before, then you can always turn to the market, turn to Google, turn to consultancies or whatever else, and have a discussion, try and get some experience. But it's a quick enough idea to know that in the car example I was talking about, you're going for a 4-door family car, not a sports car or a clapped out old banger. So sorry, there's another question here come in about solution summary is as a response. Is it early? So my view is that's all the box that you're trying to follow. It's not the details, but it is at least enough to know what direction you're going in. So you know roughly what it's going to be. The solution might be quite different to what perhaps people kind of thought originally, or some of the things that put forward. So that's some ideas on at least kind of getting to a starting point. And if we then go over to our prioritization scorecard, so Rupert, go to window, and then here we go, and then you just need to, we can have a look at that one. So actually, if we go to the Excel, the scorecard for a minute. So carrying on this discussion on the mechanics. So you've got some rough ideas of what you're doing. And to answer Rupert's question about, right, how do you stop pet projects? How do you stop other kind of things going on? How do you stop people doing stuff that are, there we go. I'm sorry, Rupert's just sharing the screen. Other stuff that they don't want to do. A very simple prioritization scorecard can work a treat. So this is an example that we use. You can make it easier than this. You can make it more complicated than this. It looks at the benefits of what you're doing, the strategic alignment of what you're doing, and the deliverability of what you're doing. And you've got kind of 3 or 4 answers per question. And it basically allows you to say, well, yeah, look, is this project really valuable to us as a business? Does it align to what we want as a strategy? And how easy is it to deliver? So if it's got loads of benefits, it totally aligns to the strategy and is really easy to deliver, those are the kind of projects you want to do. That will give you a high score. These scores are weighted, and you can decide whatever's weighting is right for your organisation as well. You might be looking at that thinking, oh, there's far too much there, that's too complex. Trim it down, keep it simple, but have something that just gives you some kind of view against at least some of those areas, i.e. how good it is for you and how easy it is to deliver, and score them relative to each other. So you've got your sort of scoring that you go through, and it's consistent. So every project goes through the same matrix, everything goes through the same scorecard, and you can capture those details and be able to then have the discussion, which says, yeah, great, this is clearly a more important project for us. Now, for me, the important thing here is not that a 67 scoring project will be more important than a 65 scoring project. They're pretty much the same ballpark. It should enable a discussion. It's not computer says no or computer says yes or whatever else. It allows you to have a conversation as an organisation, as a business, to go on and talk about then actually what do we want to do. And where it highlights is you've got 90 scorers versus 40 scorers. That's kind of a no-brainer in my book. It's very kind of clear that you should be doing the more important thing and take out some of those pet projects that might not score highly on this.
I think one of the key things here is that at the end of the day, it is not the PMO's job to select projects in the portfolio. It's the PMO's job to create and coordinate the framework around it and generate the information that the investment committee can then debate and discuss. And therefore, if a score is sort of 67 versus 70, that's sort of is not relevant. It's just, you know, one idea versus another that have got a very similar score. It's more stimulating the right level of discussion. And that brings me on to the leadership piece, because you can have as many scorecards, you can have as complex a scorecard as you want for sort of scoring initial ideas. And I think for Ole, for instance, I think it is important to have some description of the solution at this stage, because all you're doing is presenting to the investment committee the outline of an idea with a view to probably getting some seed funding or an approval just to commit some additional resource to then develop that idea or that solution into a more robust proposition to go to the next gate, which also is an approval gate. It is approving whether you move forwards with it into an in-flight project or program, or whether you reject it on the base or put it on hold. But actually, all of that is irrelevant if you don't have the right people in the room to have that discussion. And if you don't have the right empowerment within the room to take that decision on behalf of the organisation. And where I think we sometimes in the portfolio office need to be stronger, which is much easier said than done, and I recognise that, is actually, you know, we've got to be assertive about what's needed from the organisation for us to be successful around the portfolio. You need the level of sponsorship from within, you know, with the PMO that enables the PMO to have a credible position at the executive table. And you need that championing and sponsorship to be represented in the investment committee in order to debate ideas, discuss ideas, and for the leadership team and the relevant members of the leadership team, probably not more than 3 or 4, otherwise it just becomes too much, to actually decide what do we go ahead with. So we approve it to the next stage and it goes into the next stage. What do we put on hold because we're not prepared to go with it yet? And what do we reject because it's actually not got a future within the business? And often it's the leadership piece. You know, the tool is easy. We can give someone this tool here, and they can essentially mark their pipeline of ideas based on a really simple overview of each of those ideas. But if you've not got the right people in the room and the right decision-making capability, that governance meeting is not going to really be of any value.
So go on then. How often is that? Let me have a little, because I'm going to share perform and we can see the list. But how often would you say you want to have those discussions, Rupert, in your mind?
I think those investment committee discussions should be somewhere between monthly and quarterly.
I think that's exactly right. I think
annually is way too far out. It's ridiculous. It's not, who knows where we're going to be in 6 months' time.
Yeah, and if from a organisational sort of financial perspective, there's a push to have an annual budget, that's absolutely fine. That makes sense. We can put in placeholders. We can manage how they're going to work. We can sort of think about how to manage that. But it's really getting that regular and ideally monthly, but if not quarterly, kind of view of agreeing all the new starts and things that are coming through. And these don't need to be long, big meetings. They can be fairly short and to the point. If they're well prepared for, you've got the information you need, and you can look at that and be able to say, yeah, okay, we know we can start 2 projects in the next month. Which 2 are the next 2 off the block? Now, if we look at this screen and we sort by priority score column, the overall priority score. So yeah, if we can just have a look at that one, I'll just sort it on the heading. So here we go. And one more. Top of the list, there we go, because we've got a night project and then Apollo phase 2 that are our next priority scores. So having that list, having that view starts a very easy discussion. Now you might actually say our cash flow project is more important because we as a business want to do it, even though it's scoring 80 and it's 5th in that list. That's fine, that's a valid decision. What you probably wouldn't say is going down to the bottom of the list and saying, actually, the first one we start is our Office 365 upgrade because it's only scoring 68 and it's not that important compared to the other stuff that we can do as a business. So having a good list and view and way of looking at these.
And this is, these ideas here driven by the sort of drivers that most people would normally expect.
Yeah.
So resource, t-shirt size, benefit type, alignment to strategic objectives, all of that sort of stuff. But then when we get into a debate and a discussion around what we approve to the next stage, what we put on hold and what we reject, we're talking about a very high level view. This is not detailed. This is, this really, someone who's generated an idea should be going through some structured questions before answering some structured questions before they go to investment committee, but not spending hours and days building business plans.
Absolutely.
It's madness.
Now, sorry, I'm conscious we had a couple of questions come in. So Peter was asking about value definition. So Peter, hopefully, as we've chatted on a little bit, you've seen a bit of that. And in terms of kind of benefits, we keep it very simple. As an organisation, if you want to do more around defining where value is and how you earn value out of the project you're doing, that's absolutely fine. But if you're not at that level in terms of your organisation, just keep it simple, keep it to the benefit. But you should have a good view at the start as what's going on. Now, there was one other question that I saw come through. Sorry, I'm just going to scroll up on our question list because I'm conscious that we've
got questions. This is brilliant. Keep the questions coming.
Vicky asked about projects that are already in flight. How do you retrospectively apply prioritisation? So it's a good question and a good challenge. I think some of that has got to be a change in culture to be regularly looking at the projects. The way I would do that is to set up a very simple kind of pipeline process. So by that, I'm talking about capturing the ideas, shaping them or analysing them, as we talked about in this call, scoring them for new ideas. And as you do that, start to look at what is in flight as well. So you've got sort of both parts of the conversation. I find scenarios where we've had conversations just looking at the in-flight portfolio and saying, right, we're going to rescore everything is quite a difficult conversation to have with the organisation because projects already started, they're already going, they've got pet projects in there, etc. Where there are capacity challenges, that helps that conversation because it can be well, if you want to start this project, we've got to stop another project type of discussion. Yeah. And that's quite good to be able to score stuff. So if you can sort of, drive those kind of conversations, but it should all be through a sort of investment board or roadmap management board or prioritisation board, whatever your forum, your monthly or whatever it is forum, where you've got the right leadership, the right sponsorship there and attending, short and sweet sessions with the right preparation going into them. and you can have that conversation, which is, look, we've got X number of things in the portfolio. Maybe we can't deliver them all. Maybe we've got too much. Maybe we need to trim it down. Maybe we've got new stuff that wants to come in, but we've got to get rid of the old stuff, and we can't do that. So that's how those conversations, and they should all be scored in the same way. So I wouldn't, I wouldn't try and create a different scoring model for in-flight or anything else. I've kind of got to compare apples with apples, as the old expression goes, and do score them as you go. But maybe do a few at a time, pick out the ones that you think are the highest risk or have got the least benefits, and start those conversations going within your organisation, and let people realise it's okay, because maybe actually stopping a project is the right thing to do for the organisation.
I think an interesting one is, I think in my whole career of 30, 35, 40 years, I have never had such an extraordinary experience around prioritisation as we had in January 2020. It was one of the few times ever, in fact the only time that I can think of, that I can remember, where portfolio prioritisation was almost forced. So we've almost, as a profession, slightly overcomplicated sometimes the way we try to do things within the portfolio office. And I sort of look in the mirror sometimes and think, have we created that problem? In that particular situation, you know, an external factor that affected everybody suddenly happened, and it just changed everything in one day. And therefore, the next day, people were having to sit down and reprioritize their in-flight projects because the world had changed. But there was no time to do impact assessments and what we would normally have as our normal preferred way of managing our profession of optimizing a portfolio. It was much more about, what do we have to stop now? What do we need to keep going? And actually, there's some new projects we need to add. So everyone's going to be working from home. We need remote working type projects. We need health and safety projects for people working from home, etc. And it was the most extraordinary lesson, I think, of how, you know, in certain circumstances, you can be brutal and make decisions around reprioritizing the portfolio, but you kind of need an imperative to really be for that to happen. Peter makes an interesting point here, which I just want to touch on, which is essentially, how would you score or prioritize a regulatory change that is a must? It has a must hit date, so it's probably a must do. If it's must do, then that overrides everything.
There's actually, in the model that we've got there, it automatically sets it to a 100 score, so it is top of the pile.
Yeah.
If you've got to do it, there isn't a choice. It doesn't matter whether it has minimal benefits or whatever else. If it's a legal or regulatory compliance, it's got to be done. It scores 100, it goes to the top. People might have slightly different takes on that. You could do it a slightly different way, but fundamentally, if it's a must do, you've got to get it scored right up there. I want to answer Dimitri's question as well, asking about whether this can be done at enterprise level or by business units, and how important is the company-wide consideration.
Yeah.
So in an ideal world, for me, if it can be done at enterprise level, that's exactly how it should be, and it's great stuff. But some organisations are not either ready to do that
or too big.
Or too big, and there's all kinds of factors. So that is not essential.
Yeah.
If it's done by area, the key thing is to include the customers of that area. Now, if it's just all internal projects for the benefit of that area, you're fine. But quite often it might be, I don't know, a customer services team delivering to various different parts of the business, or working with other parts of the organisation, or a technology team delivering solutions for other parts of the business. And that's where it's important that those stakeholders are very involved in the discussions. Got an example that we've been working with recently where the stakeholders have been very involved in that prioritisation, and there has been some great conversations between different business areas about what is right for that business as a whole without the technology function being involved. They've just let the conversation happen. Yeah. And these business stakeholders have had some really good challenging conversations and come to an answer without blaming technology for not being able to deliver. It's been really sort of powerful to see.
I've had the opposite.
Okay, go on.
So the opposite for me, my experience recently with a client was that prioritization was happening in departments, and the people that ran those departments were prioritizing based on their desires, their objectives, not the organizational objectives. And consequently, you know, there was a bunch of activities being prioritized that were not aligned with delivery of the organizational strategy.
Yeah.
And it's a real that's a real problem.
It happens, and I guess it's a great kind of example if you're looking and thinking about your organisation and how can you start to improve prioritisation. Do think about the stakeholders that you need to involve. So Rupert's point about sort of leadership and getting the right forums in, make sure those kind of stakeholders are there and part of that, and understand what you're trying to achieve, and have that regularity that they can really build experience and get into a good kind of rhythm.
It's interesting. I mean, one of the things that I personally do is coaching senior executives around their role within the context of transformation. And part of what I'm doing in those coaching sessions is making them try to understand what it means to be a sponsor, whether you're sponsoring an investment committee, whether you are chairing that investment committee, whether you're sponsoring a major transformation program. But just getting them to understand what they're accountable for in that role, because without that, this is all irrelevant. You can have, as I've said before, any scoring tools, you can have Perform like we've got on the screen now. Any of that is irrelevant if you don't have the decision-making capability in the room. And you need to demand, you really need to assert yourself on the organization to say that's something we have to have. And if it's not working, you need to find a way of getting it working, because I guarantee it will be the portfolio office that get it in the neck if it's not working. It'll be blamed on the portfolio office, which is completely wrong. But
the other thing is these things take time. So I've sort of seen where people think, oh right, we'll set up a new prioritisation process and it will be all up and running next month. And it's like, well, no, that's not going to happen. You might be able to define the process, but getting the organisation behind it, to understand it, to make the right decisions and stuff, does take time. So if you're sitting there thinking, great, I want to roll out an improved prioritisation process, expect sort of 6 to 12 months of really getting it embedded, getting it working well, getting everybody behind it, bought into it, getting through some tough conversations, and they will happen. So be prepared for that as you go into it. And
Vicky,
I was going to come to Vicky's, because Vicky's got a great question.
She has.
And I'm going to kind of segue into it. So so if you're sitting there thinking, right, I want to improve prioritisation, I think, as we talked about earlier in this call, so first of all, set out your 2 stages of your pipeline process. You're capturing the ideas and then you're assessing them. That's great. Make sure everybody's kind of familiar with that. Then set out your governance, so how you're going to make those decisions, how you're going to actually get the right people in the room and what they're going to do, and the scoring based on that. And then start to get established. And your first one will be not great. Your first one will be kind of, a little way off, but build on it, keep refining it, improving it, and you'll get to the point where you can make some really, really good decisions on what you're doing. So Vicky's question here was around a 2-tier decision criteria, organisational and functional department, which is absolutely brilliant, and is a really good way of perhaps segueing into that. So we believe that the portfolio should absolutely be tiered. We actually quite often talk about a 3-tier scenario. So you have your key sort of strategic programs at the very top. There's not many of them, but they're hugely important, huge amount of benefit, really key for what the organization's doing. You have your kind of key projects in the middle layer. There's quite a lot of them. They're important stuff, but not quite as big as the strategic, of course. And then finally at the bottom, you have small change. So these are kind of much more straightforward things. Lots and lots of them, quicker, easier to deliver, straightforward. And absolutely, you should be able to prioritize based on is as well. So you can look at that organizationally and functionally as well. For me, the organization is probably the bigger hitters, the strategic, the key projects, etc. And then perhaps functionally, there's some key projects, some small change as well. And prioritize it that way. So you can look at, right, what are we doing as our strategic programs? Do we know the 2 or 3? Are they the right 2 or 3 that as a business we're doing? Sometimes we've gone into organizations and seen that pyramid turned on its head. So by that, I mean, there's a bucket load of strategic programs, far too many, and actually not very many things being managed as small change.
Keep the lights on, doesn't get a look in.
No.
But I think Vicky's point is interesting, and I've got a client that does it really well. The one thing that becomes difficult is that when you're doing your prioritization at the functional level and separately at the organizational level, it becomes far more difficult to do your resource planning enterprise-wide, because obviously resources are taken up on small BAU activities as much as they are on sort of your tier 1, tier 2 programs. And I've got on the screen here, so as far as a typical life cycle is concerned, there's nothing unusual about what's on the screen, but I had a meeting yesterday with a client who was looking at this 2-phased light feasibility and then a more detailed assessment with business case as gate 1. Light feasibility gate 0, more detailed business case gate 1. But he actually decided he wanted to create the front end of the life cycle as that second phase. So the light feasibility would be when it's in an ideas pool, but once it goes into the more detailed assessment, that's actually in the in-flight life cycle, because you're committing resources, you're committing some funding, etc., to developing that idea into a much more detailed plan.
Rachel makes a really good point here. Organisation that worked with 80 projects, top 10 were decided by the exec regardless of score. It's keeping up with the competitor, and the 70 were scoring. Look, it's a valid way of doing things. You might find that your organisation, that's the way it needs to work. One of the challenges I can see with that is a little bit around others having a kind of buy-in to that overall, and maybe everybody in the organisation just knew that that was the way it was, and that's fine. In an ideal world, and I appreciate it's very easy to sit here and say and much more difficult to actually do in reality, but the scoring matrix should give you those answers. So if you wait and ask questions in your scoring matrix based on some, I don't know, competitor kind of, activity and being able to keep up with those or whatever else, hopefully you should be able to score everything and to get the right answer. So those top 10 projects do come out as the top 10 in the list, because they are actually really the most important for the business.
So, Adrian, I mean, I said that I wouldn't sell anything.
Yes, we know.
But I can't help myself all the time. And Russell asked a really interesting question. He says, setting the priorities is the easy bit. Absolutely. We find the more challenging aspect is ensuring the discipline of focus on priorities without tinkering with the pet projects is tricky, which it is. So it's interesting. One of the things that we do is PMO assessments. We assess a PMO. What's really interesting is why people ask us to do that assessment. It's not normally to say, tell us how good we are. It's what it is sometimes, but it's actually, there's normally a more underlying objective to those assessments. And here's the ridiculous thing. You know perfectly well what you need within your organization to be effective. Sometimes it takes a third party to come in and land that message and land it really strongly, to be saying, we've done a PMO assessment, we've been assessing how effective you as an organization are at prioritizing your projects and deploying your investment, whether it's CapEx or OpEx, most effectively. And right now, your issue is with the people around the boardroom table. It's not with the tool, it's not with the approach, the methodology, it's the leadership around the boardroom table. And quite often that's something that we can stimulate, weirdly, through a PMO assessment. So that's just something that we end up doing as part of an assessment. And it sort of helps. But I think if you're not getting that leadership, there comes a point where you have to demand it. You've got to say, I cannot be effective in my role as a portfolio office or running a portfolio if we don't have the decision-making capability to actually take those key decisions.
I'm going to try and answer two different questions with the same answer. So a little bit of what Russell was talking about, and I think it was Steve was asking earlier about keeping information up to date. So how do you make sure you keep the sort of prioritization, the pipeline information up to date? Well, I think both of them lead to visibility. So if everyone within the organization can see what is in the pipeline, how it's being scored, and how it kind of how it actually looks compared to other projects, that visibility will really help both keep everything up to date, because people are seeing it. And if your project is out of date, or the start date's gone, or whatever else, you'll see that that's out of date, and it will pretty quickly get updated. And if people can see what the pipeline is, and they can see perhaps things that are moving or changing or whatever else, that will sort of fairly quickly hopefully stamp out that kind of behavior. So making sure the pipeline is visible, the scores are visible, they're open for discussion. It's not a kind of, well, this is just our little kind of own internal process or whatever else. Everyone's part of it. Everyone can challenge it. Everyone can ask all about it. That's, yeah, really really good way of doing it. So yeah, so when you've got your process set up, you know how you're working, you've got your board, you've got your leadership support, just make sure it's open to everybody.
Yeah, and I think, you know, when it works, it's going to be incredibly beneficial to the organisation. It's also going to be incredibly beneficial to the portfolio office because it gives you credibility, and credibility is something that PMOs often lack, and it's no fault of their own, quite possibly, but it's just an unhappy fact that PMOs are often thought of as being administrative and bureaucratic and process driven and making life harder, when actually PMOs that are working effectively with effective leadership around them are enabling and accelerating the pace of change. And that's something we need to go for. I'm very conscious of time, and we could go on for hours on this, but actually there's two things that I think really dovetail into this discussion that we haven't talked about, but that are ideal platforms for future webinars. The first thing is resource management and capacity planning. How you actually connect your resource management ambitions to prioritization of the portfolio, and the challenge of doing that across a large organization, particularly without tying resource managers or people across the organization up in knots. And the second one is another topic which is talked about all the time, and which we've really got our eyes focused on for Perform, our software products, which is benefit realization tracking. And that all starts in this part of the process, in the very, very front end, the quality of definition of benefits, both at gate 0 and at gate 1, feasibility stage and at full approval stage. And then for me, it also links to accountability for realizing those benefits through the life of the project and well beyond, on the basis that a project finishes once you've generally delivered the enablers into the organization. It's your business owners that need to take accountability for realization of the benefits. Yeah,
I think kind of, as we've said before, and as Carsten points out, it's kind of success for me in terms of implementing a prioritization, portfolio prioritization way of working, is that the stakeholders in 6 months' time look back and they say, look, this is really easy, it's really straightforward, and we have some great discussions at the right time. We make the right decisions. That's what you've got to aim for. Yeah. And don't worry about kind of, well, we've got lots of steps in the process. We'll just keep it super, super simple. Keep it as simple as you possibly can. Really, yeah, challenge yourself and challenge the organization if they want to add bits in or make it complicated. You can make it complicated down the line when you're super mature and super good at it, but start off with really, really basic.
Of all the consultants that we come across, the one thing that AP and I have always sort of focused on for ourselves is that we're going to be the consultants that specialize in simplification. Yep. We want to make everything we look at more simple, because if it's more simple, it's more likely to work. And it is as simple as that, to coin a phrase.
Yep.
So whether we're doing portfolio consultancy or whether we're doing PMO assessments or whatever we're doing, for us, it's all about making it as simple as possible to generate an outcome that's got value. And that's what we want to stimulate.
And that outcome in this scenario is that the organisation makes the right decisions about the right projects.
Yeah,
that's great. That's what's key to it.
I'm sure some of you have got 2 o'clock meetings, so we're going to sign off here. I hope everyone has enjoyed the discussion. Thank you so much for all of your input into the chat. It's hugely appreciated. Really enjoyed having you on board, and please come to the next one. It won't be in the too distant future. We're also going to be looking at how AI can potentially impact portfolio management moving forwards. So that might be one to wait for, and we will see you all soon. Have a great day.
And thank you very much for all your questions all.
Take care.
All the best.